Welcome once again to space and harmony, in harmonia of life. Some of you probably have heard about the allegory of the 10 plagues of Egypt, when the Pharaoh and his people got cursed with 10 plagues when he didn't allow the people of Israel leave Egypt since they were captive. What many people don't know is that these 10 plagues represent 10 obstacles that we must overcome in order to grow inwardly, and they correspond to the 10 spheres of the Sephirotic tree, which you can see described in the scripture, even in the New Testament. Check Colossians 1:9 and you'll see the 10 spheres perfectly described by Shaul. And of course, they were also mentioned by Yeshua when he spoke of the parable of the 10 virgins, or the woman with 10 coins, one of which got lost and she had to turn on the lights first. And the woman represents the soul with the clothes that belong to the tree of life, which is including the Sephirotic tree, but is not reduced to the Sephirotic tree. Later on I will clarify this further. But the woman is Malkut, the kingdom, where we are now, and we need a foundation, something solid in which we can rest like this rock. Otherwise, we are subject to experience the 10 plagues, the first of which takes place in the kingdom and is the plague of blood. The rivers of Egypt, the Nile especially, got filled with blood, and fish died and many other creatures, and thus the Egyptians lost their main source of sustenance, because the river Nile was life for them. And exactly the same happens when we get flooded with negative emotions, worries, anxiety, all of which is due to losing our solid rock, our faith, our way. If we have a clear aim, the finality, which is already part of the tree of life and not just the Sephirotic tree, then we can know where we are going and what are we going to find in the way. Now, when we get lost in these rivers of emotions, then problems multiply, and this is the second plague, the plague of the frogs. Frogs whose sound do not let us sleep in peace because of the sound they make. Just as our preoccupations and problems multiply, our imagination gets mad. And this is also the sphere where people try to acquire many external things to have a sense of security, but it's something which never arrives. Others may even have many children, thinking that God asked them to do so. Grow and multiply. We read in Genesis 1, but this is not a command from the Holy One, but from the fallen nature of Elohim, the forces of nature, some of which are positive and other negative, and both require energies to multiply so they can live. Now, in this sphere we also find another aspect, which is the social element. Frogs have cold blood, and when social relations get cold, people separate from each other. There is a sort of division, and this is also the problem in this sphere. Now, if in the first sphere we had the woman as representative. In this second sphere, Yesod, we have Joseph, which is the son of Jacob, Israel. And Joseph was able to manage his imagination, his abilities to conquer Egypt, to manage the wealth, and even overcome the temptations of the Pharaoh's wife, and all listening to the voice of his father, which he remembered. And in this sphere, the key is the harmonia of imagination. So we can be really blissful wherever we are, even if there are some problems outside. If we are not able to rectify our negative imagination and try to find security outside, then we move to the third plague, which is the plague of the lice, which, as you know, are parasites that stick to the hair. And in the teaching of light, hair represents the Holy Spirit, or the clean Spirit, whose 9 fruits we already saw in the video of the octaves, if you are interested. And when these 9 fruits of Spirit, among which we find the joy of life and faith, trust, when we lose that, then we fall into depression, sadness, which is the plague of the lies. We lose the center. Our consciousness sets like the sun is now setting, and then we become submissive to fatality. This sphere has to do with humble consciousness, but the negative aspect of humility is submission to things we wrongly believe. We tend to believe that not having money keep us from doing certain things that we dream, or that we don't have all the abilities that we need. All those beliefs generate a cycle of negative, repetitive thinking that leads us to the following plague, which is the plague of the flies. And flies, as you know, come from decomposed matter, and they also feed on decomposed matter, excrement, just as we do when we go back to the old negative habits, old negative emotions. We see that all around in religion, science, the culture in which we are immersed. And all this negative circle moves us even farther away from the solid rock, the foundation that we need in order to thrive in life. And all this sense of insecurity and emptiness leads us to the following plague, the plague of the livestock. The livestock was another source of sustenance for the Egyptians. It provided milk and meat, and we also have physical sustenance. But instead of using physical food as a source of sustenance, we try to fill inner voids, the emptiness, using food. This is one of our main tragedies. We use fats, proteins, starches all mixed together, thinking that we are going to solve the problem that way. But the problem gets even worse because the animal, which is the body, gets sick. And the sphere in which this plague takes place is Tiferet, beauty, harmonia, which is the sun shining behind our shadows. And when this sphere is not in harmonia, then we get abundance of pride and self-pity. And this is the problem behind wrong food habits. Now, in this sphere of Tiferet, we must be able to see the face of the Father everywhere around us and within us. The face of the Father is the beauty of light and life and the loving vitality everywhere. As I said, Joseph conquered Egypt because he remembered what his father told him, and he was able to see the face of his father as well, which is the inner sun, the inner conscience, the true solid rock, the divine name in us. And as I said, Joseph's father was Jacob's Israel, and Israel, as we saw, is the collective of divine souls that form the face of the Father, which is in the head, the first manifestation of the infinite, invisible, divine being. All those who have a cell of divine light within are part of the divine face. This is why we can contemplate the Father in us and everywhere. Tragically, humanity behaves as livestock, cattle. That takes place when we don't realize who we really are. Unfortunately, when we don't find harmonia in this sphere, we are very likely to experience the next plague, the plague of ulcers and boils, which includes things like eczema, allergies, cancer, leaky gut, which are actually cuts in the gut. Personally, I have experienced many problems due to a few of these ailments. Doctors do not seem to understand the root cause, which is the acidity caused by a sea of distressful emotions. These distressful emotions are very well symbolized by this sphere, the sphere of Geburah, the power. And power is also associated to Mars, a planet of war and struggle, associated to the emotion of fear. From fear come many of our struggles and hatreds as well. And all this makes us very, very, very sick on many levels. Physically, mentally. Many types of cancer and other diseases could be resolved if people were able to access the subconscious and unconscious level on which these negative emotions take place. Negative emotions which are associated to negative beliefs, wrong forms of thinking. So we need to find the positive side of Geburah and Mars, which is our capacity to overcome anything. Instead of having bad blood, we need a spark of Martian rebellion within. But this is a rebellion in the sense of overcoming obstacles and becoming more and more what we really are. Otherwise we come to the following plague, the plague of hail, the storm of hail and fire. Hail are, as you know, balls of ice, and since we are in the sphere of Jesed, mercy, we can deduce this has to do with false mercy, false love, cold-blooded actions that appear to be kindness but have wrong intentions behind. We see that when people feel sick inside and they play many roles in order to rule over others, inwardly they are feeling hatred towards them, but outwardly they do anything to get their favors, use them as they please. Obviously these are just clues. We can dig even deeper in these spheres. They are full of wisdom. Now the following obstacle is the plague of locusts, which, as you know, can eat the entire harvest of a year. And the same goes for our negative thoughts, negative emotions, and especially acts lacking harmonia. We can ruin not just a day or a week or a month, but our whole life with an incorrect action. Everything we do should be in harmonia with our divine intellections, divine ways of seeing, understanding reality. Otherwise, we are moved by anxiety, by fear, by struggle, and all this leads us to destroy the fruits of our life. And when we lose our gifts, we move into the next obstacle, the plague of darkness, obscurity, which is when we lose the spark of intuition, when we lose wisdom. And if there is no wisdom, there cannot be real divine conscience. Then everything around appears confusing. We don't know who we are, what to do. We don't even know how to relate to ourselves, to others, to things around us. And that's just one step from the last and final curse, which is the death of the firstborn. The firstborn of the Pharaoh, which in this case is already sitting on the crown of the Sephirotic tree. So it's when the Luciferic soul has been able to dethrone our divine soul and is sitting on the throne of the unconscious, governing our subconscious, generating all sort of negative emotions, desires, selfish desires, destructive thoughts. And this spiritual Pharaoh does not care about the body he is trying to possess. He is just trying to abuse the body all he can until the body gets totally destroyed. This is the death, finally, the death of the ego, which is a result of allowing selfishness take control up to the root of our being. This is why in the allegory it is said that the Israelites were told to put the blood of the ram on the doorposts so that the destroyer, the angel of destruction, didn't kill the firstborn of the Israelites and went to kill the firstborn of Pharaoh, which is obviously Amon-Ra, the deity of the Egyptians. Curiously, the horns of the ram look very similar to the amygdala, which is the seat of emotional processes in our brain. And when this amygdala is hijacked by the activity of the reptilian brain, that's when madness takes place. So we must sacrifice the ram, the old animal nature, so we can live our true divine life. So we have come to understand that the seat, the throne of Lucifer, is the brain, and he governs from the subconscious and unconscious, and therefore we must be very careful who we sit on this throne. Our true essence must be the Ena, the I am, the pure I amness, the Ani, I in Hebrew. And from this Ani comes the finality, our true aim of life, which is really what gives us a sense of solidness and direction, helping us flourishing with our full tree of life, and not just the garments which are the Sephirotic tree with the 10 spheres that can be very easily darkened as you already saw. And this pure I amness is precisely what helped Moses, guide the people of Israel out of Egypt, crossing the Red Sea of emotional distress, the Red Sea of emotional destruction, which is the result of all the false crowns the Pharaoh puts in our unconscious mind. These crowns are 10 in number. We must discover them. Just to give a clue, one of these crowns is witchcraft. You already have an extensive article that I wrote about the problem of false ideas and false concepts which exert witchcraft on our consciousness, and this paralyzes us completely. Another false ground would be the acts of divination, when we try to guess what will take place in the future. Many people even try to divinate what will happen by using many forms of witchcraft. And then we also have magic, believing in external rituals, actions, as if they were able to cast lightnings upon others or get us something done. For instance, mechanical prayer is a form of blind magic. Many of the rituals used by priests in all religions are forms of blind magic. We also have sorcery and many other deceptions that we must overcome in order to cross the Red Sea of emotional distress, and also, as we saw, the 7 octaves of consciousness, which are symbolized by the 7 weeks, Shavuot, from Pesach to Pentecost, Shavuot, in which the 9 fruits of the Spirit grow, helping us to access deeper and deeper measures of light and receive the inner Torah, the inner teaching of light, just as the emissaries or apostles received this inner Torah from Yeshua. So remember that we can only be this pure divine I amness, this expression of the Holy One, by vibrating with the love that opens a space to the full truth without shadow, feeling the true vitality in calm. Blessings.